All right, here we go. There's a little bit of background sound going on here, but I'm going to try to ignore it. It's kind of tough to do this here. I love doing this, but it's kind of tough. Like, I'm in a way, can't wait to get home, to get back in your usual setting, go up in the woods and stuff, in the mountains and do it. But at the same time, I don't really want to go home just because of that. But in a way, that's one way that I do feel I would like to be at home, is to be doing this and doing what I've got planned to do when it comes to this and more. But anyways, make do with what we got, right? It's just tough around here. There's just so much going on around here. Background sound, there's nowhere for me to really go out and do this without making it a big expedition trying to get away from people. It's not easy. But anyway, that's not what it's about. But anyways, if there's a little bit of background sound, apologize, but this should get received well anyway. Here we go. Listen to this. This is titled My Alaska Experience /Hunt. Hey there. Thank you for a place to vent a bit. I'm a poor speller / reader, just fair warning. Been hunting and fishing and shooting since as young as Mom would let me go outside alone. I'm 59 now. I've been gold dredging around Trinity area for 15 years. I shoot IPSC and 1,000-yard competition. 5 years ago, I booked a solo guided moose grizzly hunt to Alaska, the southwest side of Denali. The area is grandfathered in to hunt for the first master guide of Alaska. When he dies, that's it for hunting there. That's probably too much info right there. This place doesn't get hunted by a handful. This place doesn't get hunted, but by a handful of people. It was a float hunt from a bush plane. 3 aircraft to get there. 70 miles in from a very small runway, and we are as remote as it gets. Half the guides I've been with have been more than rough and hard to get along with. Tight-lipped and military-like rude, but they deal with all sorts of idiots that have money. Okay, so the third day we have only floated 5 of 70 miles. I'd already got a 9-foot grizzly, and we had just located some really nice moose on a pond. Plan was to get a good night's sleep and go for them the next morning. That moose was mine. He wasn't spooked, and I can take game from a long way off. That night, we camped on river. There wasn't a shallow part of the river. The edge of the bank was cut so it was 5 feet deep where we tied off the raft for 200 yards in either direction. I checked. 3 a.m. I could hear something heavy walking around our camp, crunching rocks over the sound of the water. I thought I could hear people talking quietly. It sounded like a record was being played backward, almost like Chinese. It went on for 10 to 15 minutes. I was scared, almost anxiety attack scared. I had a .44 mag, but felt very vulnerable and disoriented. I was freaking out in my tent, too scared to unzip and look outside, just too scared. I knew my guide wasn't playing a game. I could hear him snoring from 25 yards away. Then the rocks started. Several very large rock had hit the water in the river. They were hitting so hard that they were impacting the rocks at the bottom of the river, 5 feet deep. I know what beavers sound like, and they weren't beavers. I'm telling you this because I just found your YouTube stuff, and a guy mentioned the rocks were coming from straight downward. No way to have that happen with such large, powerful splashes. No cliffs around it. It was flat for a mile in all directions. The next morning, my guide was packing raft with a nervous look and told me to get my shit on the raft for going to a better place downstream. He knew what was going on. We never spoke about it. We also lost most of the food. I told my wife this is the only other time I've talked about it. I moved here to Alaska 3 years ago, and I'm actually a bit scared to go out now. I don't think they want to hurt us, but they have some gifts we don't. Thank you, Tom Ridley. There you go, Tom. Welcome to the club, man. I know it's going to be tough to go out. It's tough to go out for a lot of people to keep going out, but you got to go. You got to go. Don't let it steal anything from you. You know what I mean? You got to keep going. You have to. It's funny how many people will talk about it, right? Not me. But anyway, moving along. There you go. I'm sure there's a whole pile of guides and hunters in Alaska that know about this shit, and they're not saying nothing. I will guarantee you they're here listening too. Next one is titled Mount St. Helens / Ape Canyon Encounter. It's got some photos too. Good morning. My name is Robert. This was my first encounter with something I couldn't explain. This past Memorial Day, okay, what's the date on this? This is in 2021, June of 2021. Sorry. This past Memorial Day, I went with my dog, Beagle / Hound mix, to the Ape Canyon trailhead. I've heard the story of the famed event, but wasn't expecting to see or hear anything. When I got to the road leading up to the trail, I was blocked off to vehicles because of the snow still present on the road. I said to hell with it and decided to hike the 5.5 miles to the trailhead. After about 3 miles up the road, the snow got thicker and my dog started playing in it. He almost tripped me. That's when I noticed he stepped in something. It took me a few seconds to realize it was a footprint in the snow. After I was able to get my thoughts together, I pulled my knife out and I laid it next to the print for a size comparison. Afterwards, I continued up the road to the trailhead. It took me an hour and a half to hike up there. There was no one around, and I was alone the entire time. Once I got onto the trail, you could tell that no one has been on it, with all the cobwebs. After 10 minutes on the trail, I started to hear thuds coming from across the valley. I knew they weren't gunshots or logging, due to being in the military and years of competition shooting. They persisted every few minutes as I headed up the trail. After 1 mile, I came to a giant print in the mud. I took a picture and continued. About another half a mile in, there was a decent-sized log that was across the trail. I tried to convince myself that it was deadfall from the winter. And just when I was about to walk over it, there was a sound I will never forget. The sound like drumsticks hitting each other about 10 to 15 meters in front of me. I stopped. My dog snapped to attention, and I was on edge. I was armed with a pistol, but I did not reach for it. I put my hands up and I said, "I will respect your wishes if you respect mine." I turned around and walked back down the trail. I could still hear the knocks as I was leaving, when after 10 minutes I heard a noise to the left of me up a hill. My dog automatically looked up the hill, cocked his head back as if he was confused by what he was looking at, and lunged forward. I pulled on his leash and continued to the road that led me to the trailhead. And after I left the trail, all the noises stopped. I headed down the road and finally came across the first set of people on bicycles after hours on my own. Once I got home, I looked at the pictures and couldn't believe what happened. I believe the knocks were two creatures communicating with each other, letting each other know that I was going up the trail. Maybe even a heads up to me, but I was in their area. Attached are the photos I took. My tracking skills are not what they used to be, but you can see toe pads and outlines. I want to say I'm not crazy, but there has to be something out there. Nope, you're not crazy, and yes, there is something out there. There's a lot of things out there, and tens of thousands of people know it. So you're not alone. And there's the photos. And consider them shared, and welcome to the club. And be careful out there, man. You know what's out there, and they know you know now. I'm not saying they're dangerous, but brace yourself the next time you go hiking and they want to announce themselves to you, right? Another one. My father's story, second attempt. Hey Steve, my wife and I just sent a small donation to support your work. It is a token of our appreciation of your tenacious pursuit of the truth. I think you know by now that the space you've created has provided the first chance for so many honest people to share their experiences. The ridicule and character assassination for relating their stories has prevented them from ever sharing again until now. Regardless of the outcome of this project, your impact on the well-being of your contributors will be worth it all. And now to my contribution, or rather my father's. Thank you for those kind words, man, a kind gesture. Absolutely appreciate that. Thank you so much. And now to my contribution, or rather my father's. My father related the story to me when I was a teenager. My father would also have been a teenager at the time of the event. It took place in the mid to late 1960s in rural northern New Hampshire. It happened at night during an almost whiteout condition blizzard. My father was being driven home after, what I remember, was a church event. His mother was driving the car, and she was accompanied in the front seat by a fairly overweight adult female friend. My father made it into the back seat. My father rode in the back seat. They had to crawl down the road home as the snowfall was obscuring my grandmother's view. My father said they crested a hill, and my grandmother slammed on the brakes. As he looked through the windshield, he observed a huge bipedal creature standing in the middle of the road. My father said he was enormous, at least 8 feet tall. He said it had mainly light-colored hair over its body. This sounds cliche and sounds like I'm forming this story to mimic other stories on your channel, but he said the creature's eyes seemed to emit their own glow. He said they were red. I've seen numerous animals' eyes, hundreds to be honest, reflecting the headlights, and they are typically white or yellowish white, never red. Anyway, at that point my father said the overweight friend in the front seat squealed and crawled into the back seat beside him. She then cowered near the floor. If I remember correctly, the being then roared at them. The following part was the part that really stuck in my dad's memory. The being was standing in the middle of a 2-lane road with 6-foot shoulders on each side. He said the being took 2 steps, and in those 2 steps was able to clear 1 lane of the road, the shoulder, and leap over the adjacent snowbank. Steve, my dad said the snowbanks were at least 6 feet tall. My father said my grandmother's friend was absolutely hysterical the whole ride home. I'm asking you don't use my name. My father has no idea I'm relaying his story. I haven't asked permission. He has a career military officer and was the most fearless man I've ever known. Without giving much away, he was on an attack helicopter. He was an attack helicopter pilot in Vietnam, an integral part of the command structure of the New Hampshire National Guard. Thanks again for making this space, Steve. Keep up the important work. All the best. Okay, man, I got you. Hope you didn't put your name in the beginning. And there you go. And it can't be, people might worry it sounds like somebody else's story, but it has to sound like somebody else's story because it's true. It's fact. And it's real. So the details have to repeat themselves. If they didn't, then it would all be bullshit, right? Appreciate you sending that in, man. Next is titled Kansas Dogman. Hi, you can call me Billy. I'm going to keep this short as possible because I know you receive so many emails daily. I used to live in Kansas between Topeka and Kansas City. I lived directly off of I-70 by 2 miles at best. One morning around 4:30 in fall/winter 2020, I saw orange heat flashes of possible heat lightning to my due west toward Topeka. I'm a truck driver and was then as well. So I am often up extremely early, yet in Kansas, mild summer-like temperatures can still be felt late into autumn, which explains heat lightning at 4:30 a.m. I took a right-hand turn onto Farmers Turnpike, which is opposite direction of Topeka, where heat lightning was coming from. After a mile of driving, I see a blue flash about a quarter mile in front of me on my driver's side over a cornfield. No more than 30 seconds later, I see a massive creature run out of the field and into the outer rim of my headlights range. Mind you, I'm driving 50 and a 55 because of the constant hazard of deer sprinting out. My 02 Suburban definitely did not stop on a dime. Anyway, this massive gray and silky furred creature ran at a faster pace than my car was traveling. In what seemed like one unnatural fluid movement, this being was on the double yellow line in the road in one step. From this step, it leapt and cleared a 3-foot tall concrete barrier on this mini bridge over a floodplain and into the tree line on the other side. It looked so fake, as if a computer glitch in real life. This 9-foot tall creature looked as if it was running at over 60 miles per hour. I don't know how a 9-foot tall creature can have that speed, size, and coordination to cross an entire 2-lane road in one swift movement and end up 12 feet up or higher in the tree line on the other side. Long story short, I ended up having a drone flown next to my vehicle a couple months later while on my way to work, and noticed I was being followed by the same vehicles while at work and off work in my personal life. The feds were not trying to hide. On a few occasions, I even caught glimpses of their license plates, and they were government plates. Don't be afraid to share your stories if you have them. They will intimidate you and try to silence you. I believe either way, my soul belongs to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and I must boldly speak my truth and my experience with a Dogman. It was certainly no Sasquatch. It was broad, but not as massive as the Bigfoot. It certainly was scary, and it had goat-like legs, as described by many Dogman sightings. Endo email. And so many people have reported something like that. It's absolutely ridiculous, right? So what do? You take from what you will, or you leave it. Thanks for sending that in, man. Appreciate it. Keep us updated if you have anything else happen out there, all right? Be safe. All right. Here we go. Here comes another one. This is titled, Young Juvenile Loves to Watch Me Cook. And this is June of 2021 as well. Hey, Steve, me again. I'm the guy from Sasquatch and New Locations video. Second story at 6 minutes. All right. So that's the title of that past video, is Sasquatch and New Locations. Second story, 6 minutes. I said I would send in my encounter that happens behind my home. A few months ago, I was cooking some of my V8 burgers on the grill, and I got the feeling I was being watched. I looked up the hill behind my home, and there was a young juvenile black 5.5-foot male standing there swaying side to side looking at me. He stood there for maybe 5 minutes, then walked 20 feet to the right and stopped. For maybe 5 minutes, then walked 20 feet to the right and stopped. Started swaying again, side to side again. Steve, I was not at all afraid. I was kind of amused. I knew my wife would not believe me, so I called to her to come see for herself. Well, she was caught up in some romantic movie, and I couldn't get her to see this young Sabe watching me. I don't know how to this day why I never even thought of grabbing my phone and taking a few pics. And like you say, most people wouldn't believe the pics if I had taken some. But anyway, Steve, I was so grateful that this young juvenile liked the smell of my spicy V8 burgers. I've been texting with a few How to Hunt family members, and they have been asking me to send in this encounter. I tried this time to put in proper grammar and punctuations, but hell, writing isn't my forte. I'm so grateful that you've opened this forum for everyone to get this out in the open. My belief is that our so-called government will not recognize this species because if they were protected from the lands that they reside on, could not be developed, thus for causing millions of dollars lost in the elite's pockets. It always boils down to the dollars. Steve, I'm so sorry for the loss of your beautiful horse, Mr. Macaroni. The bond between a human and a horse is something that cannot be compared to. My new family members here at How to Hunt is my favorite part of the day. The people I have met has your back to the end, as I do. I would take on Satan himself in hell for you, brother. You started something that cannot and will not be stopped. I will keep this short, as you have many other people more important than me. God bless you, Steve. I'd give anything to hang out and talk about what this world is headed to. I think we have a good idea now that the ball is rolling. If ever in Ashland, Kentucky, email me and I'll let you meet this young juvenile. Thank you again, my new friend. Okay, man, better be careful about the location making those statements, because there'd be a handful of mega douchebags trying to find your property, right? Flying around with helicopters and stuff and terrorizing the shit out of you and whatever's around there. And I appreciate those kind words of support. I'm sure everybody here does. And you're right, this won't stop. You can't stop this now. You can't stop it. It's not going to stop. Ever. It's only going to get more informative. Now, let's move along to another one. It's getting late. I got to get to bed, I think. This is titled Strange Happenings. His demon name is Mike Phyllis, but some call me Mo, and I don't care if you share my name. Phyllis, F-I-L-L-I-S. I hope I didn't butcher your name, Mike. Appreciate what you do, and all of us that are a part of this amazing movement are doing. Keep it up. Also, sorry for the loss to Mr. Macaroni. I, too, have lost a longtime animal friend and companion recently. I'm willing to share an experience that happened to me above the hills of Williams, Oregon, one Memorial Day weekend. It was my birthday, and a few friends and I were going up into the hills to have a fire, drink some beers, and celebrate my birthday. We went up Caves Camp Road above a clear cut above town everyone hates. The top of the cut is heavily forested with old growth trees, and the road dead ends at an old landing that is 75 feet by 100 feet. It's heavily protected on all sides by dense forest. About 5 a.m. we were asleep. Me and my tent and my friends were sleeping in the back of their truck beds without a canopy. It started to rain as it always does on my birthday in Oregon. My friends and I woke up. They decided to have to leave due to the fact that it was raining and they had no canopy. I helped them load up and heard them drive all the way down the mountain. My buddy had a super loud exhaust in a Chevy pickup that you could hear all the way down the hill. He lived at the bottom of the road we were on, and you could hear him pull in his driveway and shut the truck off. I went back into my tent and got back to sleep. I was awakened at 5:35 a.m. to something streaking down the side of my tent. The first time I thought it was just fir cones falling out of the trees and hitting the tent, so I tried going back to sleep. It happened again in the same spot. The second time I stayed awake. That third time it happened, I hit the side of the tent and hit something hard that felt like a hand. I sprang out of my tent to see what the hell it was, with an AK-47 in hand. I saw nothing. It was a clear 75 by 100 foot landing surrounded by old growth timber. I then thought it was my friend playing a prank on me, even though I did not hear them stop when they left or even a door shut. I said, "Ha ha, you guys are funny." As soon as I finished the sentence, I was hit right in the nose by a fir cone square in the face. I mean, right in the nose. I saw nothing from the direction it came from. And then I said, "Knock it off, I'm trying to sleep." I turned around to go back in my tent and sleep when I was hit 2 more times in the right shoulder and neck by 2 more fir cones. I spun around to see if I could see what was throwing them, but I saw nothing. I got an overwhelming feeling that I was not alone and started to walk backwards to the tent with my AK pointed in the direction of where I thought they came from. I said, "Knock it the F off." And all hell broke loose. I was getting bombarded by fir cones from what seemed like 6 or 7 different directions, and all of them hitting me in the face or neck. I thought to myself, there is no way in hell that these are my friends doing this. I still had that feeling that something was watching me and feeling like I needed to leave. I quickly started to pack up my stuff while I was being assaulted by fir cones. I got everything packed in my truck, and when the last of my things made it in the back of my truck, it stopped and was completely silent. I mean, not a sound. I opened my truck door and stopped to look back in the direction from where the first cones came from, and boom, hit square in the face again by 1 fir cone. I climbed to the truck and raced out of there. It was crazy. First off, way too accurate for a person or persons to continuously hit someone in the same places over and over. And I also don't know a single person that can throw a fir cone over 50 feet, let alone 100. Since then, I have found tracks and seen them peeking from around trees at me on numerous occasions. I've also heard them talking to one another while peeking out from around trees. It has never stopped me from going out in the woods, but since that first strange day, it is as if I can feel when they are around. I always say in my head and out loud, "I'm not here for you, and I mean you no harm." Now they just seem to want to watch me while I'm out in the woods. I'm okay with that as long as they keep their distance. Thanks for letting me share this, and I hope that it helps in some way, shape, or form. Keep up the good work, my friend. If you're ever in South Dakota, get a hold of me. You have a place to stay and a cold beer waiting for you. Thanks, Mike Phyllis. Mike, appreciate you, man. If you're still hanging out here in This is June of 21. If you're still here, maybe you could possibly, if you get time, you feel like it, email us back again and give us a detailed description of what you're seeing peeking at you from around trees, all right? There's going to be a lot of people here that are curious about that, including me. If not, that's fine too. I mean, let's face it, we've heard the description a gazillion times, right? But somebody else might be familiar with that area, might be familiar with what happened to you and has it happening to them as well. You never know. And they might be looking for some kind of validation or confirmation or somebody to speak to from around there. You never know. Now, okay, one more. This is titled Johnny in the Woods. And thanks for that invitation for the place to stay and beer, man. I appreciate that. You never know. You never know. Johnny in the Woods. Steve, about 2 years ago, I shared the brief encounter I had with a young male Sasquatch here in Vermont. Since then, I often revisit the brief moment in my mind through the day and in my dreams. I woke up a couple weeks ago recalling being in my grandmother's kitchen in Connecticut. I was no more than 5 years old at the time. I'm 73 years old now. My grandmother, mother, and aunt were all there. My uncles may have teased me. These women never had sport with me. They loved me, and were always there to keep me safe, counsel, and advise me through my life. That morning, and in subsequent mornings, they warned me to not approach, quote, Johnny in the woods, end quote, if I were to see him. I was frightened by the warning. I recalled these women had told me, quote, Johnny in the woods, end quote, was a big old man who wore animal skins for clothing and lived someplace back in the woods. They indicated that he lived in the big woods up the hill across from the house. Apparently someone would report seeing him from time to time, and he would hide or disappear from view. Well, Steve, I grew up and hunted every inch of those woods and beyond for miles, and never found, quote, Johnny in the woods, end quote, home, or the remains of his camp or cabin. It struck me that the animal skins had hair. I think I think that what they were describing was a Sasquatch, not an old man who wore fur. These women are all gone now, and I do not think they ever saw Johnny. They were relating what they learned from the people who grew up there, like old Dan Sullivan. Dan was my friend. He was very old when I was very young. He was an outdoorsman who purchased his land as they did back then. You purchased the trees and the land came with it. As a young man, Dan was one of the last marker hunters of upland game birds. Dan had excellent English pointers and a Parker 12-gauge double-barrel shotgun. Dan told me about how the entire town was shut down when the shad ran, and the people would stretch nets across the Housatonic River, and harvest the shad. Dan was the youngest in his family, and his father told him of the days when the people would net Atlantic salmon in the Housatonic River. Dan died at 98 years old when I was about 16 years old, and that is reaching back 155 years to his birth. His dad was a boy when his father told him about the Atlantic salmon harvest in the Housatonic River. Steve, this is a near Revolutionary War connection to the past. This area is highly developed today. The Housatonic River has many dams and was highly polluted in my childhood. When I was a boy, there were still some wild areas. Could, quote, Johnny in the woods, end quote, have been a Sasquatch? I now think so. All the best. Bobby Skowronski, Sharon, Vermont. I hope you said it's okay to use your name, because it just went down. Yeah, chances are Johnny in the woods. Sounds like Johnny in the woods just might be Mr. Big in the woods, right? Wouldn't be surprised at all. I appreciate you sending that in. Appreciate everybody. It's nonstop in the emails. Hold on, what do I got? One more here? Is this one? All right, one more. This is titled You Are Getting Close, and it says, no one. My personal details are inconsequential. Due to NDAs and much more severe repercussions, I will not disclose too much identifying markers or precise information and deal only with nuggets of knowledge for you. Like many in my past employment, we are former military, some coming from special operations background. Most of us had various degrees in scientific fields, anthropology, medical engineering, etc. Some have worked for OGAs, other government agencies, overseas in conflict zones, but all of us work for USAPs, unidentified special access programs, funded through dark money in your country's budgets. One of these such groups deals with phenomena such as you are inquiring about. I had worked with them. I'm glad you're in this pursuit for truth. People need to be a part of the quest for truth and knowledge, but unfortunately are left in the dark. The beings in question are not apes. Their DNA markers are more inclined with ours. Have you ever questioned the absence of the missing link between man and ape? Well, they study them, capture them, and science has done their detailed study, both alive and through necropsy. I have searched, detected, and obtained several specimens through various means. Many I'm not proud of. Imagine a world where evolution was turned on its head. Religion was a farce to control the masses, and governments were not supreme to one another. The lights in the sky are real. We are not alone, and the powers lie to you. These beings are a part of that discussion also. These beings live, for the most part, in cave systems, underground networks of subterranean systems, hence many sightings near mountainous regions. They've been here for thousands of years, and they are highly intelligent. Unlike man's evolution, they have adapted to nature. We, on the other hand, try to artificially adapt nature to our need, all the while destroying nature in the process. Our race is the cancer. These dark groups I have previously mentioned know that upon actual proof of aliens and other beings, society as we know it would be thrown into chaos. They put people in place within organizations you mentioned to spin the crazy narrative. Bogus hunts, TV appearance, and interview, all to keep the loony narrative active. Keep up your efforts, Steve. You're getting close. Best regards. There you go. Well, thank you, Mr. Mysterious. I don't think there's anything new there you shared with us, but everything you did just share is right dead in line with a lot of the people I've been communicating with. So there you go, you guys. Take from that one what you will or leave it, but this person sounds like they know what they're talking about to me. Anyway, there you go. The end of another day. Hope everybody's safe out there. Don't forget to ground your feet no matter how cold it is. Make sure you ground yourself out. It's important. Ground yourself out. Get in tune with your sixth sense, your intuition. Learn how to think for yourself. Teach your kids how to think for themselves. Point out the honest truth to your children as much as you can. I'll stop babbling now. I'll be back again later on.